My mother-in-law despised me and kicked me out of the house because I couldn't give birth. But they didn't expect that this would be the stupidest thing they did and would end up with such a bitter ending. My name is Kathleen, 45 years old. Since getting married, I have tried to pay all the living expenses for my family living together in an expensive apartment, but I never expected that marriage could make me feel lonelier than being alone. But here I was, trapped in a life I had built with Lucas, yet constantly reminded that I did not belong. For 13 years, I had lived in this high-rise apartment with my husband and his mother, Dorothy, a spacious, expensive home with a stunning view of the city, one that I paid for. Every month, $6,500 quietly left my bank account to cover the rent, while Lucas maintained the illusion of being the provider. His pride was fragile. He couldn't let his mother know that I was the one keeping a roof over all our heads. Dorothy, of course, never suspected. Or maybe she did, but she didn't care. To her, I was a guest in her son's house, an intruder who had taken up space where I wasn't wanted. I felt it in the way she looked at me, the way her eyes would skim past me at the dinner table like I was just a shadow on the wall. She had never truly acknowledged me, not since the day I married Lucas. At first, I had mistaken her cold politeness for reserved warmth. But over time, it became clear Dorothy was simply waiting for me to leave. The apartment itself was beautiful but suffocating. Every inch of it carried Dorothy's presence. She had the largest bedroom, something that had been decided without my input when we first moved in. Her floral wallpaper, her lace curtains, her antique furniture, all reminders that I was living in a place that was never meant to be mine. And then there was Bobby. Lucas's son from his first marriage, Bobby, had been raised by Dorothy after his mother walked out. By the time I came into his life, he was 10 years old, withdrawn, and difficult to reach. I had tried in the beginning to bridge the distance between us, to be a source of stability, a stepmother who didn't force her way in but was simply there if he ever needed me. But Dorothy made sure that never happened. "She doesn't love you, Bobby," she would whisper to him when she thought I wasn't listening. "She wishes you weren't here. She just wants your father to herself." I found out years later, when Bobby was a teenager, that she had been planting those seeds of distrust in his mind from the moment I entered their lives. I should have realized sooner, the way he avoided eye contact, the way he would stop talking the moment I entered the room, how he never acknowledged the small gestures I made, his favorite snacks mysteriously appearing in the pantry, his laundry always neatly folded, my genuine attempts to be part of his life. But what hurt the most was Lucas's silence. He never defended me, never corrected his mother when she undermined me, never reassured Bobby that I wasn't the villain Dorothy had painted me to be. At first, he would say things like, "Give it time, Kathleen, he's just a kid." But years passed and Bobby grew up and nothing changed. Lucas would come home late from work and Dorothy would always have his dinner ready, plated neatly, waiting for him. They would talk in hushed voices at the dining table while I sat in the living room, eating alone, my presence acknowledged only when it was convenient. When I spoke, Dorothy would barely glance at me. When I offered my opinion, she would dismiss it as if I had said nothing at all. And Lucas let it happen. I tried to rationalize it at first. She's his mother, of course he respects her, but there's a difference between respect and submission. Lucas was trapped in her grip, and I was nothing more than an afterthought in my own marriage. The worst part, I let it happen too. I told myself that if I just worked harder, tried harder, they would accept me. I tried to be the perfect wife, the one who managed the household without complaints, the one who understood when Lucas forgot anniversaries, the one who kept the peace no matter how much it cost me. But the truth was, I wasn't part of their family, not really. I was just the woman who paid the rent, cooked the meals they barely acknowledged, and washed the dishes in silence while they talked over me like I didn't exist. I should have left long ago, but I stayed. Because I loved Lucas. Because I believed that if I left, I would be the one who failed. I didn't know then that my failure wasn't in leaving, it was staying too long. It started with a phone call. Dorothy was humming as she wiped down the kitchen counter, a sound so out of place that it caught my attention. She wasn't usually in a good mood, not around me. But today she moved with an energy I hadn't seen in years, her lips pressed into something close to a smile. I should have known then. "Bobby and Stephanie are coming back home," she said, her voice light, casual. like she wasn't about to rip my world apart. "They'll be moving in before the baby arrives." I froze, my hand tightening around the dish towel I had been holding. "Moving in?" I repeated, as if I had misheard her. She turned to me, her eyes sharp, her pleasure barely concealed. "Yes. A young couple expecting their first child shouldn't have to struggle in some tiny apartment. They need the space. They need a family." I swallowed hard, already knowing what was coming next. "And where exactly does that leave me?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay steady. Dorothy gave me a slow, deliberate once-over, as if I were a piece of old furniture she had finally decided to throw out. "I think it's time for you to go, Kathleen." I felt the breath leave my lungs. Go? Where? This was my home. Or at least I had spent years convincing myself that it was. My name wasn't on the lease, but my money had paid the rent. My hands had scrubbed the floors, folded the laundry, and cooked the meals, and yet, none of that mattered. "You've had your time here," she continued, her tone sickeningly sweet. "But Bobby and Stephanie, they're starting a family. They need this home more than you do. You understand, don't you?" I didn't answer, because what was there to say? I understood perfectly. I was being erased, swept aside like I had never existed, discarded because I had nothing to offer them. No children to carry on the family name, no deep roots that tied me to this house. To them, I was a temporary fixture, something they had tolerated until a better option came along. "You should be grateful," Dorothy said, her voice taking on that familiar cutting edge. "Not every woman in your position gets to experience motherhood." I looked up sharply, "even if it wasn't really yours." The words hit like a slap. I had never expected kindness from her. But this was cruel, even for Dorothy. All those years of caring for a boy who had never been allowed to love me back. All those nights eating alone at a dinner table where I was nothing more than an afterthought. All those sacrifices, those compromises, those moments I had swallowed my own pain just to keep the peace. And in the end, all I would ever be to them was a barren, useless woman who had outstayed her welcome. My hands trembled at my sides. I wanted to lash out, to scream, to tear down every single delusion they had built about me. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Dorothy had already won. So I did the only thing I could. I turned, walked past her, and went straight to the bedroom, my bedroom. The one I had been given because Dorothy had claimed the master suite for herself. The room that had never really felt like mine. I pulled out a suitcase. If I was leaving, I was taking everything that belonged to me. I had almost finished packing when the thought hit me. Lucas. Where was he in all of this? I pulled out my phone and called him. No answer. I tried again and again. By the fifth call, something inside me cracked. He wasn't at work. I knew his schedule. He had no meetings, no business trips, but for the past few months, he had been absent, leaving early, coming home late, his excuses flimsy, his phone always just out of reach. I had ignored the signs. I had told myself that Dorothy was enough of a problem, that I didn't need to create another one. But now I needed to know. I grabbed my purse, stuffed my car keys inside, and walked out of the apartment without a word to Dorothy. The bar smelled like cheap beer and regret. I hadn't stepped foot inside in years, but the moment I did, my stomach clenched with a sense of familiarity I wished I didn't have. The bartender looked up, startled. "Kathleen?" I nodded. "Long time." He hesitated before setting down the glass he had been wiping. "You here for him?" My pulse spiked. "He's here, isn't he?" The bartender sighed, tipping his chin toward the back of the room, and there he was. Lucas. My husband. Sitting in a dimly lit booth, his arm draped casually over the back of the seat, leaning in too close to a woman with long, dark hair. A woman who wasn't me. Melissa. I recognized her instantly. She had worked here for years, younger than me by at least a decade. I had seen her serving drinks, laughing with customers, never once suspecting that she would be the one, but there they were. I stood frozen in place, watching as Lucas reached for her hand, tracing slow circles along her wrist. She smiled, leaning into him, whispering something in his ear. He chuckled, he laughed. I hadn't heard him laugh like that in years. My vision blurred, but I refused to let the tears fall. Not here, not in front of them. I turned on my heel and walked out, my heart pounding so violently it felt like it might split open. By the time I made it back to the apartment, I was running on nothing but pure, seething fury. Dorothy was waiting for me in the living room, sitting with a cup of tea like she hadn't just shattered my world hours earlier. "Did you enjoy your little walk?" she asked, not even bothering to hide her smirk. I stared at her, at the woman who had never once welcomed me, never once treated me as family. And for the first time in 13 years, I felt nothing but clarity. I had been fighting a losing battle from the start. I had tried to belong to a family that never wanted me. I had wasted years believing that if I just stayed, if I just endured, I would eventually earn my place. But I never would. This wasn't my home. It never had been. I turned, walked back to the bedroom, and zipped up my suitcase. I had packed light, only the essentials, but there was still one last thing to take care of. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and cancelled the automatic payment for next month's rent. Let them figure it out. When I stepped into the living room again, Dorothy raised an eyebrow. "Leaving already?" I smiled. "You wanted me gone," I said. "Congratulations, you win." I grabbed my suitcase, walked to the door, and stepped out of the life I had spent 13 years trying to hold together. Hey, I didn't look back. I thought revenge was a dramatic word, something reserved for movies, for people with nothing left to lose. But standing in the middle of that apartment, surrounded by the life I had built and paid for, I realized something. I wasn't angry. I was done. Dorothy had wanted me out, Lucas had betrayed me, Bobby and Stephanie were swooping in to claim what they thought was theirs. Fine. Let them have it, but not like this. The movers arrived the next morning, sharp and efficient. I had called them the night before, my voice calm, my instructions crystal clear. Take everything, I had said, everything that was bought with my money. By the time Dorothy realized what was happening, the couch was already being carried out the door. "Excuse me," she barked, stepping into the living room, her robe tied tightly around her frail frame. "What the hell is going on?" I turned to her, my expression neutral, my voice smooth as glass. "I'm taking what's mine," she scoffed, glancing around the room as if searching for someone to fix this. "This is Lucas's home. You have no right." "That's where you're wrong," I cut in, my voice sharp. "The lease may be in his name, but the money that paid for all of this, that was mine." Her lips parted, but no words came out. The dining table? Mine. The chairs? Mine. The brand new mattress she had spent years sleeping on? Mine. I let the movers do their work as I walked through the apartment, reclaiming every single piece of furniture I had ever purchased. The only things I left behind were Dorothy's old dresser and a pile of baby items she had hoarded for Bobby and Stephanie. By the time I was done, the apartment looked abandoned. Empty walls, hollow echoes, nothing left but the pathetic remains of a family that had never truly been mine. Dorothy was still standing in the middle of it all, her bony hands gripping the edges of her robe. "You can't just..." But I already had. I walked to the front door, pausing just long enough to turn back. Good luck with the rent. Then I walked out. And I didn't look back. The calls started an hour later, Lucas first. "Kathleen, what the hell did you do?" I let the voicemail sit unanswered. Then Bobby, "What kind of sick, selfish person does this?" That one made me laugh. But it was the text from Stephanie that made my stomach flip. "The baby's coming soon. How could you do this to us?" As if I owed them anything, as if I had ever owed them anything. I dropped my phone onto the passenger seat of my car and drove away, the city swallowing me whole. It took 2 weeks before their world fully collapsed. The first thing to go was the electricity. I imagined Dorothy standing in the middle of the kitchen, flicking the light switch over and over again as the reality of their situation hit her. Then the internet. No more cozy TV nights for her. Then the phone plan. By the time they realized Lucas's paycheck alone wasn't going to cover the rent, the eviction notice was already on its way. I wasn't there to see it, but I didn't have to be. I knew how it played out. I pictured Bobby pacing, shouting, his temper flaring as he realized there was no safety net. I pictured Stephanie crying, realizing that her fantasy of living in a luxury apartment for free had shattered. And Dorothy? I imagined her sitting on the last remaining chair, staring at the empty walls, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. And then there was Lucas. I knew the moment he found out about Melissa. I was sitting in a coffee shop when my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize, but the message, that I recognized. You should know your husband isn't as faithful as he pretends to be. I stared at the text for a long time, a slow, creeping satisfaction curling through my chest. It had to be Emily, the bartender, the one who had seen everything, and if she was reaching out to me now, it meant only one thing. Lucas had finally been caught. I don't know how it happened. Maybe Dorothy found out first, piecing together the late nights, the missed calls. Maybe Bobby walked in on something he shouldn't have. Or maybe, just maybe, Melissa got bored of being the other woman and decided to burn the whole thing down. However it happened, one thing was clear. By the end of the month, Lucas was alone. Bobby and Stephanie had moved out. Dorothy had disappeared into a care home. And Melissa, she was already on to her next affair. And Lucas? He was finally living in the home he deserved. Empty, cold, and completely alone. I never answered their calls, never responded to the texts, never looked back. Because the truth was, revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't about screaming or breaking things or demanding justice. It was just leaving. Taking back what was yours and letting the ones who took you for granted crumble under the weight of their own choices. And that was exactly what I did. The silence after destruction is always the loudest. I had walked away, left them to their own ruin, yet somehow I could still hear the echoes of their downfall. It started with Bobby and Stephanie. Without my money covering the rent, without the safety net they had assumed would always be there, the reality of their new life hit hard. The landlord didn't care that they had a baby on the way. Bills didn't stop coming just because they were family, and Lulu's spineless Lucas, was in no position to help them now. The eviction notice came faster than I expected. Less than a month after I left, Bobby and Stephanie were gone. I imagined them standing in the empty apartment, surrounded by the remnants of their entitled dreams, wondering how the hell they had ended up here. I should have felt guilty. I didn't. Because the truth was, they had done this to themselves. Bobby had let his grandmother turn him against me. Stephanie had expected to live off me like I owed her something. And now, faced with the cold, hard world outside of Dorothy's protection, they had no choice but to sink or swim. They sank. I heard later, through whispers, through mutual acquaintances, that they were crammed into a dingy one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city. Stephanie cried every night. Bobby resented everything. That they had finally learned what it meant to struggle, and yet they were the lucky ones. Because Lucas lost everything. The day his affair became public, I allowed myself a moment of pure, unfiltered satisfaction. Emily had come through as I knew she would. She didn't just expose him, she obliterated him. Photos, messages, eyewitness accounts. It was all sent to exactly the right people, his boss, his co-workers, his professional network. Because cheating on your wife is one thing. Cheating on your wife with a bartender from a place where your company frequently entertains clients, that's bad business. And Lucas was nothing if not replaceable. I could picture it so clearly, the moment he was called into the office, the forced smiles of HR, the scripted disappointment from his superiors. We appreciate everything you've done for the company, Lucas, but given recent developments, we feel it's best to part ways. No severance package, no glowing recommendations, just a swift, clean cut. By the end of that week, Lucas was jobless. By the end of the month, he was broke. Melissa, of course, was long gone. She had never planned on sticking around. She had used him for the fleeting excitement he offered, the pathetic little escape from his failing marriage, and the moment that thrill turned into baggage. She walked. No dramatic goodbye, no second chances, just silence. And that was when reality hit him. Because for the first time in his life, Lucas had no one to fall back on. Dorothy should have been his last lifeline. She had spent years controlling his life, molding him into the perfect, obedient son. But by the time Lucas hit rock bottom, Dorothy was already gone. Abandoned. Alone. No Bobby. No Luke. Just an old woman in a cold, empty apartment that she could no longer afford. I found out through a lawyer, one of Lucas's last desperate calls before I blocked his number for good. She can't live alone, Kathleen. She needs help. I laughed. Because help was what I had given her every single day for 13 years. Help was what I had offered when she looked through me like I was nothing. Help was what she never deserved. Figure it out, I had said before hanging up. And they did. Dorothy was placed in a state-run care facility. No luxurious retirement home, no family to visit her on Sundays. Just a sterile, lonely building filled with people who had nowhere else to go. I don't know what happened to Lucas after that, and the truth is, I don't care. Because he had made his choice, he had let his mother destroy his marriage, he had let Bobby and Stephanie treat me like an outsider in my own home, and in the end he had let his own life crumble beneath him. Not my problem, not anymore. Sometimes I think about the moment Dorothy told me to leave, the way she had smiled, the way she had won. And then I think about her now, alone, unwanted, forgotten, and I smile. The day I signed the divorce papers, I didn't feel grief. I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel relief. What I felt was nothing. And maybe that was the worst part. Lucas sat across from me in the lawyer's office, hunched over, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair a mess. He wasn't the man I had married, but then again, neither was the man I had married. He picked up the pen, hesitated. Maybe he thought I would stop him, that I would say something, offer some last-minute plea for us. His hand shook as he signed his name, and just like that, 13 years reduced to ink and paper. When it was my turn, I didn't hesitate. No shaky hands, no second thoughts. I signed clean, sharp, final, just like this needed to be. I walked out of that office lighter than I had felt in years. Not free, not yet, but close. The sun was warm on my face, the streets busy with people moving forward in their lives. And for the first time in over a decade, I realized I could do the same. No more waking up in a home that was never mine. No more swallowing words, shrinking myself, pretending I didn't notice the cold glares or the conversations that stopped the moment I entered the room. No more Dorothy. No more Lucas. No more being nothing to the people I had given everything to. I was done. And that was the first real thing I had felt in years. Starting over was quiet. I didn't have some dramatic rebirth, no reckless revenge fling or last-minute move to Paris. I just lived, for me, this time. I found a small apartment on the other side of the city. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just mine. I filled it with things I actually liked. Not furniture that Dorothy had picked, not pieces chosen to impress guests who never cared about me. Just soft colors, warm lights, a kitchen stocked with food I actually enjoyed. I slept in the middle of the bed for the first time in years. I played music while cooking, danced in my socks on hardwood floors, burned candles that smelled like vanilla and citrus. No one criticized the way I did things. No one sighed when I forgot to fold the towels her way. No one existed in this space but me, and that was peace. It wasn't until months later, standing in the quiet of my new home, that the weight of it all hit me. For years, I had convinced myself that if I just tried harder, if I just gave more, they would finally see me as family. That if I just endured long enough, one day I'd wake up and belong. But I had never belonged. Because a family that needs to be earned isn't a family at all. They had never considered me one of them. And maybe the biggest betrayal wasn't Lucas cheating, or Dorothy kicking me out, or Bobby treating me like a stranger. Maybe the biggest betrayal was mine, the way I had abandoned myself to try and fit into a space that was never meant for me. And now I was done apologizing for existing. I don't check up on them, I don't ask about Lucas or wonder if Dorothy is miserable in whatever place she ended up. I don't care if Bobby and Stephanie are still struggling, still trying to leech off someone else. They are not my problem anymore. I have new problems now. Good ones, small ones, like whether I should buy the red dress or the blue one, because I finally have plans that don't involve making someone else comfortable. Like which book I should read next, because for the first time in years I have the time. Like what kind of future I want for myself, because for the first time in my entire life, it's mine to decide. I used to think that love meant sacrifice, that being a wife meant adapting, making myself smaller, fitting into whatever shape was required of me. I thought that was strength, but real strength? It isn't in enduring pain, it's in choosing yourself. Some nights I sit on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the city lights stretch out beneath me, and I think about the version of me that stayed. The one that settled, the one that kept swallowing her words, her anger, her grief, the one that let a family who never loved her decide her worth. And I don't feel sorry for her, I don't pity her, I don't even mourn her, because she got me here, to this moment, to this life, to this freedom, and that was worth everything. What do you think about this story? Please share your feelings in the comments section below.